Todd Richards here, Roots, Hearts,
and Soul.
Stefan and I are launching this podcast based off cookbook Roots, Heart, and Soul by myself, Todd Richards, with a great help from Chef Stefan, the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Oh, you stop, you. We have such a beautiful history together.
I mean, it's crazy. Really, what people are going to get from this podcast is telling the story of Afro people, Afro cuisine.
We're going to be telling the story of the Pan-African diaspora.
Roots, heart, soul of the world, as we say. We are launching in a couple of weeks here. Some terrific guests. Stay tuned. Follow us on all our social media at Chef Todd Richards in all formats. Chef Stefan, what's yours?
ChefStefan.it, AYITI. This is the correct way to say Haiti.
Well, we're getting education already.
So if you want to find out more, if you want to listen to great stories being told by amazing, amazing culinary talents, we're going to be hearing stories from Africa all the way to the Caribbean, all the way to the Americas. It's going to be something special.
Giving everyone the good rhythm, the good vibes.
Yeah, baby.
We look forward to seeing everyone. Talk soon.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I'm Allison Kane, and welcome to In the Sauce, a podcast about building consumer brands from the ground up. I love doing this show because I get to interview everyone from production gurus to marketing and social media mavens, anyone who can guide me on this crazy journey. This is the story of building Haven's Kitchen sauces, but it's also the story of every growing brand because we're all in the sauce. Today, I'm in person at the same laptop in the same room at my office speaking with Ben Bacon, founder of Lentilful, the instant meal company helping Americans eat more of the powerhouse legumes we all know and love. Lentilful's convenient, high-protein, high-fiber, lentil-based meal cups cook in about a minute and are taking the CPG world by storm, winning both the Nexty Award at this year's Expo West, as well as the Nosh Pitch Slam and Naturally Bolder Pitch Slam in February. Lentilful is available online and at the Fresh Market, Thrive Market, Whole Foods Market, anything that ends with market, and more is coming soon. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Allie. It's so good to be here.
Just so everyone can get a visual on this, we're about 6 inches apart, leaning our faces
How's my
into,
breath?
it's fantastic, leaning our faces into my laptop because Ben is here for fancy food. And I was like, rather than trying to find a cubby at Javits and, putting on your headphones, just come over and we'll sit in a cubby together. So here you are. Welcome.
Here I am.
Have you ever been here? To our office?
Not to your office.
Okay.
No.
It's fun.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like I was going to start this I feel like I've been a part of this journey, but I don't want to make it about me, although
We can.
we might.
Yeah.
But it has been some journey. And you always seem like wherever I see you, you're locked and loaded, as my kids would say. You're dialed in, you're cranking it, you're pitching, you're winning, you're selling, you're doing it. So it's fun for me to watch. And
We're pretty similar. We're both older founders with lots of kids club.
Yes.
We got 4.
Okay.
Not as many as 5.
Yeah. It's once you're like over 2.5, you're basically.
How many? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, like 2 and a step or something. Yeah. But from the outside world, I guess, okay. Backing up, this is a bit of a COVID story. Mm-hmm. This is you and your wife. You're locked down. You're looking for less meat. You're looking for more fiber, more protein, feel better. Lentils for the win.
Yeah.
They're the oldest win in the book.
Yeah.
But what was the leap from, okay, I'm going to eat some lentils to, okay, I'm going to start Cup of Noodles for Lentils company?
It's been actually like a 10-year journey that we have had, like many Americans, which is, we're no spring chickens. We're getting a little older. We're thinking about
that old. You keep referring to yourself. I mean,
anyway.
Yeah.
But
he looks very young, everybody.
I'll be 48 next month. Yeah.
It's
all relative.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So 10 years ago, it's like, okay, how can we start eating more plant-based? And in the early days, I think it's really easy. You switch out your regular milk for almond milk, my whey protein powder in the morning for pea protein powder, and one with nature. But then it gets hard.
Yeah, because you need a lot of protein.
And you got salads that don't fill you up. You've got
cheese.
The veggie burger that's kind of stale when you cook it, or the alt meat that smells weird when you grill it. And so COVID was a time where my wife and I really dialed up the plant-based journey because we had all the time in the world to cook.
Right.
And we also had to eat everything that was in our pantry. There, the shelter in place, and it's silly to think about now, but like they were saying, don't go to the store, eat what you got in the pantry.
Right.
We kind of ate all the stuff we normally eat.
Yep.
And then we started digging way back in the pantry.
Right.
And she pulled out this dusty bag of lentils that had been in there, I don't know how long.
Yep. And
she made it. And I was about 2 bites in. I'm like, what am I eating? And she's like, it's lentils. I'd never thought twice about lentils. And then it's one of these things that, have you ever noticed like something obscure and then you see it like everywhere?
Totally. I feel like that's my life.
It's actually, I think it's like the Bader-Meinhof syndrome or something. There's a name for it.
Like if you're looking for circles, you're going to start seeing circles.
If you get
everywhere.
a Tesla, you see Teslas on the road, things like that. I started seeing lentils everywhere. And like I would get online and see these articles like the number one thing Americans should be eating, and they're not lentils. I would see Arnold Schwarzenegger eating lentils for muscle. I would see Tim Ferriss eating lentils to lose weight. I would see Dan Buettner talking about lentils and the longevity food, and Reese Witherspoon on Instagram Live cooking lentils mirepoix, which we stole for one of our recipes to like 1 million people. The New York Times, the biggest recipe of the year was lentils. And you go to the store and there's no lentils.
Yeah, there's like those big sacks of...
It's just big bags of beans, dried beans.
Right.
And, then I became the weird guy at parties that started talking to people about lentils and why don't they eat lentils? And, I like lentils. And it came down to, I don't know how to cook them, or, I don't have time to.
Right. And I don't know how to season them, and I don't know what to do with them.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
And so, the world kind of went back to normal. We went back to our crazy lives. And I noticed that it was, again, kind of hard to eat plant-based. And it was me one morning in a rush getting an instant oatmeal cup out of my pantry, Purely Elizabeth. Shout out Purely Elizabeth. And I heard that rattle, and that's when the light bulb kind of came on. Like, could we make instant lentils? And from there took about a year and a half of development. There was a lot of like.
Well, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So that was step one. Step one was like okay, I can put these in a cup.
Yeah.
Step two is, okay, now I'm going to try to actually make this into a business. So where did you even begin? Like, it took a year, but what was like, how'd you even start?
One step at a time. And, you start looking for things that can help you build confidence. And I was listening to In the Sauce podcast. I was listening to other podcasts, and, it's like, could I start a food business? Do I have the knowledge to start a food business? I don't really know how to start a food business.
Right.
And then there's little things, steps you take that you get more excited. Like I, found the name Lentiful, and that got me excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found my designer, who's world class, and we could talk about that, but I found her in a unique way. And, we got a brand identity behind it. And then, you start kind of asking questions and Googling, like, how do I, find a food scientist to make this shelf stable and like help me develop recipes. And I found a great partner there. And it's just taking one step at a time. And, then it was giving it to friends and family, seeing what they had to say.
And basically the idea is like, you just add hot water.
Or water and microwave. Yeah.
Right. And microwave.
That's it. And I say this as me too, but Americans are lazy, and we're always in a rush for better or for worse. And I really do think the time constraints of our lifestyles prevent us from eating healthy a lot of times.
Totally.
And, 60% of Americans don't know what they're going to have for lunch 5 minutes before they eat it.
Yeah. That's
and so you're kind of going back to back. You're like, oh, shit, I got to eat. And then you kind of go down to, the store and you grab a greasy burger or something that's not good for, this is the path of least resistance. Yeah. Or bar. So I've learned a lot about lentils in this journey, and we can talk about that. But like, America makes world-class lentils here in the U.S. And we have a lentil belt. Montana, Idaho, Eastern Washington.
Love it. Amazing. So there's a sustainability factor too.
100%. Yeah. They're used for regenerative agriculture. They're carbon negative. And so
what a fun thing.
I've talked to a lot of lentil farmers.
Win. Yeah.
The kind of ironic part is all of these lentils that we're growing here in the U.S., we export most of them overseas to Spain, Italy, Greece, where they actually eat lentils.
Yep.
The average person in Spain I saw eats 27 times the amount of lentils as the average American.
Amazing.
They live a lot longer too, and they have healthier lifestyles. Yeah. So, just kind of connecting the dots, and it really is like, okay, is there a way that we can get more lentils into more American pantries and meet Americans where they are at?
Right. So going back to, you're figuring this out. Do you still have a day job while you're doing this? No. Okay. You went all in. You're figuring it out. You're talking to a designer. You're talking to branding people. You're talking to co-packers. And did you, I guess, because you're early enough in the journey that you can still remember the stuff that will be helpful to people who are listening 100%. To this, where sometimes I have guests that are like, yeah, I slept on a couch. And I'm like, but what was that like? And they're like, no idea, because it was so long ago. But were you creating sort of tranches for yourself? Were you creating like, if I can do this, then okay, I'm going forward? Or were there things where you're like, well, if we can't, for me, it was like, if I can't get a 40% gross margin, I'm not going to pursue this because I was told enough times that it was going to be really hard. And I was like, I'm not going to make that mistake and get on that treadmill. And fortunately, I was able to get there. But did you have sort of either like green light steps and did you have red light steps that you kind of set for yourself in that first year?
I still have green light steps.
Well, me too. I came into work today and I'm like, okay, I spent the weekend figuring it out. I'm not going to think about anything except velocity in Whole Foods in the Northeast. Yeah. Like, that's it. And then, of course, like 6 other things today. I'm like, oh, by the way, can we also talk about this and this and this? And everyone's like, what happened to that whole thing? We have to keep making them because we have to be process focused, not outcome focused. Yeah. I mean, otherwise we die. So, but what were they? Like, what were the big sort of inflection points for you, both negative and positive, where you're like, okay, I think this is going to happen. Okay, actually, maybe this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, in developing the products, I ended up going with, her name's Sarah Massoni. She's in Oregon State. They have a food innovation center. A lot of big brands actually work through her and her team there, like Bob's Red Mill. But the thing is, they specialize in cups. They actually know cups really well. So I sent them this concept. And even though they typically work with Pacific Northwest companies, and I'm in Colorado, I think they were intrigued enough by this concept that they were willing to take it on.
Yeah.
And, again, during the height of COVID, we're mailing back and forth like little recipe ideas.
Yeah.
And there's very high FedEx bills. But once we got to a point where I remember sharing it with one of my guy friends who's not a plant eater, and he's definitely big on the meat. I gave him one of the flavors, and I just saw him like just chowing down. He's like, he looked at me. He's like, I would eat this every day.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And so that gave me confidence, right? And so then you start Googling and you start asking around and doing all the research of what could be a good co-packer to partner with. And that was a whole process.
Did you enlist anyone to help you find a co-packer?
I didn't. It was a lot of networking. And, I know someone who knows someone. The very first co-packing conversations I had went really bad because I was, solo person, person with an idea.
Totally.
And I realized pretty quickly I wasn't speaking their language.
Right. Jesse.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like one thing I did was, I live in Colorado. There's this conference called Pack Expo in Las Vegas. And it's really more for like equipment, machinery, kind of like the nuts and bolts of how these co-packers work. And I took it, like I flew out there for a day and I asked the biggest cup, these manufacturers, like,
does this?
But just like, tell me about this speed and tell me about how many cups, a minute you can fill and all these other things. And, I showed him like a little prototype of what I had. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's your classic double dump system where the lentils and veggies go in the first dump and the spices in the second dump.
Right.
So I get back and the next co-packer I call,
double dump.
I was like, yeah, double dump. And, and they're like, oh, okay, you know what you're talking about. All right. So it's like, I tell entrepreneurs all the time, you have to in some ways fake it until you make it.
Yes. No, I had Jessie, what's her last name? It was a great episode. She used to work at Startup CPG.
Oh, it's Jessie Freitag?
Yes,
yeah.
Freitag. And she was like, she gave some of the best advice. She's like, do not call a co-packer and not have an idea of first year sales, and do not call the co-packer and not know what their MOQs are or how you're going to blah, 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 or what you're, because they just like everyone else, I keep going back to this idea that of course, there are going to be people who take risks, and there are going to be investors and retailers and co-packers and partners that take chances on you. Mm-hmm. And founders got a founder. So we always assume that we're going to be so winning in our conversation and in our charm and in what we have. And the world really needs lentils in a cup. Yeah. So of course they'll get that. But they're also dealing with their own businesses that are challenged and their own existential crises and their own concerns about, the economy and politics and their kids. And that we just have to make it as easy and as frictionless as possible for all these people to say yes to us.
Yeah, you need to fit in their world.
Yes, and that's a really great way to go into a break.
Yeah.
So we'll take a little break and we'll be right back.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by their natural ecosystems. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangelands experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that address grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
I'm back with Ben Bacon, founder of Lentilful. Okay, so what was the first moment where you're like, okay, we have a business? Was it a sale? Was it an interest from a retailer? Was it the co-packer making a real actual thing?
So I launched a company about 18 months ago. The first 6 months, it was really kind of almost like a George Costanza, do nothing.
Yes, exactly. Do the opposite of all your instincts.
And it was not good in retrospect. Just over a year ago is when we just weren't moving product, and I wasn't getting calls, and I was waking up in the night.
Well, how were you thinking you were going to move product?
Well, I had kind of reached out to a few retailers. I didn't really hear back. I was thinking, I want to see how this stuff turns online. I was pretty cautious.
So you made an e-com store.
Shopify.
Okay, and you had product.
We did, yeah. Okay. We made product, and so I wanted to see. Okay, friends and family, they bought it. Check. Okay, would they tell their friends and family? And would they buy it? Check. Once you see strangers that you don't know buying a product,
that's the most crazy thing. When you're like, wait, is that my mom's friend? And then you're like, do you know? Like Rita Jones. And she's like, no. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's a real customer,
So I wanted to make sure that was working. It was. And then were they repurchasing? And they were. And was my website converting? And it was really converting.
And were you putting ad spend, and were you
I was cautious on the ad spend at first, just because I heard Facebook ads were really expensive, so I just kind of stayed away from it.
But what did you do to get people to know that it existed?
The short answer is not enough in the early days.
Got it.
And then about a year ago, I was like, you know what, I need to kind of move more product. Let's try these Facebook ads. And I remember putting in $50 in a day, and we got $250 in sales.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that can work.
This can work.
Yeah.
And then I started.
And you have a very lightweight, easy to ship.
Lightweight.
Great. Product to packaging ratio.
And so we dialed up the Facebook ads, and now it's still, we put in $1, we get out $4 every day.
It's great.
And so we've spent in the last year $250,000 on Facebook ads. We've gotten 20 million impressions. We've driven over $1 million in Shopify revenue.
That's amazing.
Net sales. And so for me, it's really, I just needed to have the confidence to do that earlier. I wish I had. And the number one thing behind the whole thing is honestly the reviews. And people, we now have over 1,000 5-star reviews, and it really just loosens everything up for more people to kind of understand I'm safe buying this. And for us, it doesn't work for a lot of food brands. But for us, the economics worked out where we were first order break even.
Right. So that can really work when we're talking about something that is so lightweight, shelf stable, doesn't break.
And you have high conversion rates on your website. Right. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah. And is there anything you think that you tapped into early on? Because, one of the things we always talk about here with messaging is like, and we've gotten, I think, tighter about it, but when you are a lot of things, you're weight loss, you're also vegan,
we don't talk about any of that.
You're also healthy, and like, what do you...
We say instant lentils, and so what happens is people say something healthy fast, and they actually don't think it's going to taste good, and then they order it, and it does taste good, and they're overjoyed,
and they almost don't care at the beginning.
And they're looking for the easy button, right?
Yep.
And so
would you say that if you have 5 keywords that you make sure are in every single ad, or 3, it's instant or fast?
Sometimes the words don't even matter. It's the visual. And, I always recommend, we did not have a big budget when we launched. One of the few areas that I over invested in was for photography right out of the gate. And we used our friend over at Garnish Studios.
Oh my gosh. I love
TQ
him
Lamb,
so
shout
much.
out.
Garnish Studios, shout out. He's the best.
And we were able to capture these really
yummy,
stunning
delicious,
visual. Yeah. And so, and the packaging, like when we were designing the packaging, I was sending my designer cups of Jenny's ice cream and say, let's make it look like this. And I have very strong feelings, like for something healthy, I want to avoid heirloom, ancient, provision. I think brown. All of that is, of that is like code word for like dirt.
A little bit. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. So you're getting it going. Selling.
We turned up the volume on Facebook ads, and then we found out who our customer was, and that was a very big surprise.
Yes, so tell us about that.
So we designed, when you do the research, you're like, I'm starting a vegan brand, even though our name is bacon. But like the types of people that eat vegan, it's mostly female. It's, West Coast, East Coast. It's, urban. And like in my mind, I had visions of myself like doing demos at the Erewhon in Venice, and then all of a sudden we start really dialing up the sales online, and it's these people in these flyover states and these small towns that I'd never heard of. And one moment that I remember very clearly was last April 15th. I got a customer service. I still do all the customer service. I got a note from a customer named Gail who was from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Not my mom's friend. Yeah.
so like Grand Rapids, Michigan, Gail, she said she, mistyped the address. And so I went out to Shopify, and as a founder, you're always like, okay, what does this customer look like in your head? And I'm thinking, okay, Gail's probably a name. Like if you, and I've done this, but like if you look at the name popularity charts, like the average 70, Gail is 70 years old. Yeah. You're exactly right. Yep. And so I'm like, this is amazing. We have a Gail. We have like kind of an older consumer, right? And I go out there and I punch in her name, and it was April 15th, and she was the 6th Gail to have ordered in the past 2 weeks.
Wow, you have 6 Gails. You know what though? I've talked about this a little bit because I feel like, again, everyone's kind of chasing after the same stores, and everyone's chasing after the same group of young women who are, also buying a lot of lip balm. And who has the buying power? What's like 80% of consumer spend is by women over 40, and like they make most of the decisions for their households, and they're not really being marketed to except for like menopause and like vaginal dryness, literally. Like that's what Gail is getting fed. She's getting menopause cream. Yeah. But now she's getting lentils too.
She's getting lentils. Yeah. She's telling all her
so
friends.
Did that change your marketing at all? Like, did it change the way you think about your messaging?
It does. And it also kind of made me think about our go-to-market strategy for retail. Right. And, the convention. Yeah. And so anyway, long story short, one tip for founders as you're starting to get critical mass on Shopify is look through those names. And we have, Dorothy's and Barbara's and Donna's and all these names that are popular in the 50s and 60s. And we have less like Britney's and like things like that, right? So it's a good gauge of like what your customer looks like.
Love that. That's why that first party data is really relevant.
It is. And I say the best $9 I spend on Shopify plugins every month is this one called Map Your Customers, where you get a heat map of all of your where your orders are coming from. You get a drill down. And we do well on the coast, but we really do well middle of the country.
Yeah. And by the way, there's a lot of grocery stores in the middle of the country, and you can make money there, which is really cool because you can't always on the coasts. Okay. So it probably informed to some extent your messaging. I would imagine to some extent it also informs maybe your innovation pipeline, a little bit on the recipe development, and then your retail, go-to-market strategy. So you got the confidence. You're like, okay, people are buying this and we're actually profitable selling it, which is really cool. And then now I need to go to grocery stores. And so how did you know what a sell sheet was? How did you know about a review schedule? How did you know did you enlist a broker? Like, what did you do?
This is not normal, what I'm about to tell you, but like from what I've been told, the buyers started reaching out, and they actually started filling in emails on our website to the hello@eatlentiful.com.
Love it.
And so at first was Morganita at the Fresh Market, and then it was Thrive Market. The Whole Foods buyer was in the middle of her category review for rice and beans. And she was, just saw the ad, honestly, and then went down the rabbit hole of seeing all the reviews and the 1,000 5-star reviews. And, Wegmans and Hy-Vee, all of these retailers see this, I think, online. And they're intrigued, and then they reach out.
By the way, I've never thought of this, but we did have a funny thing. There was one retailer, and I was like, people do gimmicky things, like they get billboards, like one billboard next to where like 4 Target executives' wives live. Like, oh, I'm seeing that everywhere. It must be big. They do like funny little thing, or like they
will geofence Facebook ads in Bentonville. Yeah,
right, exactly. But I was thinking you could do a thing where you just like pick.
I'm not
Rochester,
that smart.
New
I'm not
York,
that smart.
whatever, North Carolina, Publix, whatever there, and you just do ads around there with the reviews and stuff like that. It's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
But they see that, and so who was the first retailer?
The Fresh Market. Okay, and it was a great first retailer. And they've actually moved us around a little bit, so we understand like where we perform better.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because going back to the whole premise of this is, we know lentils are good for you. We know that they can be delicious. We know that this is a great product, and it's definitely like differentiated and necessary to some extent. And does it go in the oatmeal area? Does it go in the rice and beans area? Does it go in, meal solutions? Like where and how did you navigate that? And I would imagine not that many people are going to the beans, like the dried beans area.
And that's actually where we started at the Fresh Market, right next to the dried lentils, and it didn't move very well.
Right, because no one goes there. I mean,
it's the slowest moving part of the store.
Yeah,
right?
Well, that, and I think spices are very slow moving too. So you can have something that's great, but if people aren't going to it in the grocery store, it's hard to move a lot.
Correct. And so then they put us over by Goodles and Bonza, right? These nutrient dense kind of packaged meals.
Okay, that's interesting.
That makes a little bit more sense. Whole Foods, we just got on shelf on the West Coast last week, and we're in this, I call it like this elevated legume aisle, where it's, us in Heyday Canning, and then a dozen cousins.
So some cans, some pouches.
But it's for
elevated
that.
Beans. Yep. That's a new category.
Yeah.
Elevated legumes.
Elevated legumes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is, everyone who listens to this knows that, like, I'm very smitten with our aioli, and I don't want to be like, I just had a second baby and now my oldest child is like, but I mean, the truth is, like, yes, the supply chain on fresh is challenging, but the most challenging part is the lack of a category. And part of that is because we don't know who our buyer is, or the buyers move around or whatever. There's no natural place in the store. But the biggest headwind of not having a category is, again, going back to the way that consumers shop and going back to that idea of risk.
Yep.
I'm not going to take a risk on my time walking through a store trying to find a product that I think I like, you know, even if I've used it and I like it. Like, am I going to really waste another half an hour running around trying to find it in a store? No, what I'm going to do when I go food shopping is I'm going to go to do my regular path. If something pops out on that path, or if it's in the same place every single place I go, and that's just, I don't think founders really think about that. Mm-hmm. We think about, I have a product that's amazing. Mm-hmm. And Americans will love this, but we don't necessarily think about the way that people go into their different shopping experiences, the way that they shop. They shop differently in store than they do online. You know, category is a big deal.
It is.
You know, and I remember really vividly someone who I love saying very early on to me with Fresh, where does it go? And I'm like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's been 5 years and we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so do you think does everyone have, I mean,
everyone has their own vision. Everyone has their own set. The Walmart buyer I talked to today at the Fancy Food Show, she's putting us next to her instant rice cups, right? And so it's a similar format. Yes. People are used to add water, microwave, right? And this is just another extension of that.
I think that's great.
But again, sometimes you have to trust the buyer.
Totally.
And
they know their consumer best, especially the Walmart buyer. So let's talk about Walmart.
Yes.
So did you listen to my Walmart?
I did. It was one of the things that gave me confidence, where it's like, I can say yes to this.
I was like, sign me up. I'm moving to Bentonville. Like, I just want to be a Walmart buyer. I want to work for Costco or Walmart. Yeah, I do. I just,
they're very sharp.
They just know so much. Very different models, but tell me about Walmart.
So she reached out. Again, it's always a negotiation when you're bootstrapped. You want to obviously say yes to everything, but
the margin there's pretty solid, though, from my recollection when we were looking at it. It's
actually going to be a profitable piece of business for us. I'm actually excited about Walmart, and we always said somewhere in that 300 to 500 store range, we're going to end up in 400, and it's kind of the more plant-based friendly Walmarts, and they're spread out across the country. Yeah. But again, it was going back to looking at that map of where our customer base is and understanding we have more conventional type customers than maybe we thought we would have in year one. And I think leaning into a Walmart, another thing I say is, Walmart, I didn't start Lentiful to help healthy people eat healthier or vegan people eat more vegan-y. I really want this to get into the pantries and the homes that need it the most. Yeah. 145 million Americans shop at Walmart every week.
I know, it's crazy.
And that rice and beans aisle is oftentimes number 1 or 2 right behind the produce. It's one of the most heavily trafficked aisles in America.
Amazing.
So
how's condiments?
Where is that guy?
Let's talk about it. Okay. I love all of this. This is all very good, very helpful. Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about,
and by the way, your episode was very helpful in understanding like what's a consolidator and who's RJW and like all of these things like an EDI and like all of these things.
If you're going to play with them, you have to play like a big kid.
And I went out and I got a broker. We are doing everything. To the nines.
Yeah. Sure. And it's funny because I feel like, first of all, their average income has changed dramatically since, in the last several years, right?
So when she reached out, I honestly hadn't been in a Walmart in a while, living outside of Boulder, Colorado, but I drove to one and I was shocked at the brands that were on shelf because it had been a while, and there's Graza, and there's Good Crisp, and there's Purely Elizabeth,
and Bachans.
Bachans, and all of these brands that I'm buying, paying a higher price for down the road at some of these other retailers that I go to. And so I think they are very smart to be embracing more plant-based food brands. They're very smart to be working with these up-and-coming food brands.
Yeah, totally.
And to their credit.
And they're holding their price points. I've walked in and I've seen they're okay being the premium offering, these innovative brands. And the other thing that I feel like used to be a big thing is like, oh, other retailers won't like it and they won't take you if you're in Walmart. I don't know that that's the case anymore. And I feel like brands are in a much stronger position to be like, my contribution margin at Walmart is in the high 20s. My contribution margin at you is like 10 to 15.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. And that's part of the new sort of zeitgeist of like, are we growing to build profitable companies, or are we growing to build cool brands that hopefully get invested in and then exit eventually?
I have to build a profitable. We are bootstrapped. There is no money out there for brands at the $2 million mark. It's almost like you have to do it or else.
Yeah, but also I'm just so happy for you. You know, making something that's dry and lightweight is just
long shelf life.
That's what you need to do. If you're listening to this, don't do heavy, don't do wet. Certainly don't do anything other than ambient, and try to get a 2-year shelf life.
We're testing 18 months right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about how you keep winning all these things? And, you know, I had the Mazah women on a couple weeks ago. They win everything too. Like they're just like pitching their faces off and like winning. Do you know my story? I don't know if did you listen to that episode?
I did. Yeah.
Did I tell the story about the guy who went in front of me who Superman costume? Yeah. Not my thing.
I've been in those.
Not a great
it's not me.
picture.
Yeah.
But people are going to need these things more, and they are really valuable. And getting these free booths and getting in front of retailers and getting the press, like it is worth getting outside of your comfort zone a little bit. What would you say has been sort of like your secret sauce? Like aside from you have a very good product and it's pretty.
So I see these pitches. And so many times the founders focus on like their specs, like we're gluten-free, we're vegan, you know, and they talk about, and even like a lot on their own story. And I kind of zag where others are zigging. And, you know, for Nosh, it was a 5-minute pitch. I don't even think I started talking about lentil until the 3rd or 4th minute.
Okay. So you were talking about?
It was painting a big vision, right, of lentils in America and why Americans don't eat lentils, and really just kind of helping frame the story behind our mission, right? And then at the end, it's you know, more about painting a big vision going forward, but it's less about the products themselves, because assume the judges know that, right? So that would be one of my first tips.
That's a good one.
It's not always about you. It's about what you're trying to build.
That's the spotlight effect, right?
Yeah.
We zoom in so much on like what we have. I think it's shifting a little bit. Like it's almost like when we were talking about Expo West this year, how this year was much less like, look at my groovy thing that I came up with in a lab that like nobody knows that they need yet. But with enough marketing in 17 years, people will start eating this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I've made this mayo a little healthier. You know? Yeah. Like it's just a totally different way of thinking about it, because people are already eating this.
Yep.
They just want something that maybe has no cholesterol and maybe has a little less sugar, and maybe helps them with one meal of the day that they're now responsible for making 3 at home. Yeah. You know, it's good. It's like get out of yourself.
It's really bit. And don't maybe talk about how innovative you are. Talk about how approachable you are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Focus on that. Yeah. And so that's tip number 1.
Tip number 1. Tip number 2. I always I like to think in threes. So it's like, all right, I got 3 parts of my story, maybe 3 points to every part. So it's 9 things I got to remember when I get on stage. Like you really. Those things, some of these other ones, it's like 3 minutes and you can't go off script. You have to have the whole thing cold, right? So I'll take my dog on a walk and I'll practice it. I'll actually record it and listen to it as a voice memo in my ear. And then I get terribly nervous and my heart like kind of races a little bit. I actually took some performance enhancing drugs for the Nosh Pitch Slam, which was like my this is breaking news here.
Yeah, I'm like performance enhancing. I would think would wind you up. Did you take like a Xanax?
It was a beta blocker.
A beta blocker.
Yeah. And so my wife has this heart condition where sometimes it will race and she takes a beta blocker and things like that. I'm not suggesting anyone go out.
No, I feel like a lot of people do that. Yeah. I mean, I had a massive panic attack during one where I don't even remember being there. And I'm just like so grateful I didn't pass out in front of everyone. I couldn't feel my feet. I was like really not okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've now unfortunately avoided them.
Yeah.
Because I just don't want that ever to happen to me again. It's really scary and you feel like you're going to die. And then you're going to be embarrassed. And
that's I think the biggest thing that why founders don't go this.
I was going to keel over and then they'd be like, oh no, she's on the floor. Yeah. And so I take a quarter of a Klonopin if and if I'm going into like a big anything because I don't want to feel like I'm going to die. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
And I tried a beta blocker once. Like my doctor was like, okay, because she was like, maybe Klonopin isn't the best idea, but
might knock you out too much, right?
So I break it in half, and then I break it in half.
Okay,
like it's a quarter.
The microdosing.
I'm very cool. I started the trend, but she was like, try this. And I didn't. I actually felt like it sped me up more because I kept being like, what's happening? Is it happening? And then, so then I'm like, I think I'm just going to stick with what works, in my ripe old age. Okay. Let's talk about what's coming next other than Walmart.
Yeah. It's just going from, Lentiful 1.0 to Lentiful 2.0. And
which means
just from moving from D2C is really hard. And if you are break even, God bless you. It's you're doing great. Yeah. That's kind of what we are.
You used it as a launch pad to tell a story, to find your consumer,
attract
to figure some
buyers. Shit out. Yeah, it's very useful. And we're not going to abandon it. We'll probably at some point move over to Amazon. We'll do subscriptions and custom boxes and things like that. We will still that will still be the driver of our revenue for next year and maybe even the year after. But
retail is retail.
Yeah, retail is retail. And so it's just me kind of rolling up the sleeve like this.
Have you built a team?
It's still just me full time.
Wow, that's amazing. No, really, that's amazing.
Thank you. I have a lot of help, and I have a lot of smart people, and I do have a contractor on the operations side. Where this is my other advice too. Is like in the first year, you got to do it all. I mean, you wake up every day and you answer customer service. I'm doing the QuickBooks. I'm figuring out how many pounds of dried tomato I need, and sending POs too. And the sales and like.
So you did all. Oh, well, you got a broker for Walmart because the paperwork is just.
I did the onboarding for Walmart, the supplier onboarding. It was they definitely helped at the end to get it over the finish line. But I would recommend this to all founders in their first year when you're going from zero. We got to about $1 million run rate, and then that's where I was like, okay, maybe I need some help.
Right.
That's where I started reaching out and like hired a professional. My QuickBooks skills were super shitty.
Yeah.
So let's make that good and let's hire some help on the ops side because these production runs got more frequent and bigger, and that gives me more time to think about. All right, how are we going to tackle retail and like it's going to free up my time to actually go and do some demos at Whole Foods and figure out the TPRs and all these things that's been my biggest blind spot is the brick and mortar. I got to dig in and learn it and.
Here's the thing. It's every time you master one retailer, you're like, okay, I've learned this. And then you go to another one and you're like, wait, what's that? Like they all have different acronyms for all these different things. I'm like, just tell me what it is. Is it a scan? Like, what is it? And what are the things that I can do?
Or like a scan on top of an MC.
Yeah. Like what, and I find it all very, very convoluted. It's the only thing in this business that actually makes me so frustrated that I could like punch something. Yeah. Like I've been in too many, like, can we just, I want to spend money on just launching this product. What can I do? What are the options? Like, is there a menu? Yeah. Is there a way, or even just like, why aren't the products showing up online in the thing? Mm-hmm. And then there are like 16 people and no one seems to, it's just, it's very, very like Kafka-esque, I think, but
it helps. And this is what, and this to have a good relationship with the buyer who will handhold you for sure. Kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was able to meet our Whole Foods condiments buyer last night in person. And
she's the one that helped bring me in.
I mean, honestly, she's the best.
Yeah.
And part of why she's the best isn't just because she returns your email or like your call, which is like pretty awesome, kind of unusual and lovely. But we couldn't get we were trying to do like keyword bidding on, wholefoods.com, Amazon for Whole Foods for Amazon, wholefoods.com, whatever they call it. And it just, we couldn't, because it didn't look like we owned the thing, the bin number, whatever. I don't, it's called something, the ASIN, I think.
ASIN.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
ASIN.
I literally, it's like, yes, whatever. And I just kept being like, I'm so sorry, Lizette. Like, can you just try one more thing? Like, the last thing I wanted to do was bug the buyer
I know.
with like some tedious back thing number, whatever. But she resolved it. Like, she got it resolved, and it was wonderful, So yes, to your point, relationship with the buyer for the stuff is very, very good. Would you say that you have, what do you think on that note has been sort of your, again, the aside from just being a lovely man and having a good product, like what would you say has been sort of the biggest, to the same question is like in the Facebook ads, you kind of focused in on easy. What would you say you focused in on with the retailers?
I'm still working through it, right? You have to be able to, I think you said it right, where it's like, be as self-sufficient as you can, and then only break glass in case of emergency. And I want to exceed category expectations with very minimal like nagging or any sort of like, help me here, help me there. And so I'm still working through it, right? We're still getting on a lot of shelves this summer and fall. And I'll have to get back to you on that one, because I don't know if I've cracked the code on that
Were
yet.
there any surprises when, because everything's a mixed blessing, right? So were there any surprises winning the distribution that you've been winning pretty rapidly that you didn't expect?
It's funny, when I get these accounts, I don't really go crazy or get excited or anything like that. The one time I got excited was we launched on Thrive Market last month. We launched 4 SKUs, and they did their load in and they did their orders, and I think they thought it was going to last a while, and they called and we had sold through pretty quickly.
That's amazing. And it's you don't ring the bell on the first PO, you ring it on the second and the third.
That made me like, okay, maybe we're onto something. Yeah. I'm still cautiously like optimistic about how we're going to do it. I know we can turn online. I know people love it online. They repurchase it online. On shelf, I'm still working through the nuances of, do I need to add a picture of the finished product on the front of the cup instead of the artwork? And then do I have the right call outs? And we'll get there.
I mean, the good news is it feels like people do already have a point of reference. So they know how oatmeal works and they know how cup of noodles work. They do know how these cups work. I think part of our issue was like, as like kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not obvious, but like when it's like when it's intuitive. That's the word I'm looking for. As intuitive as it is to me to have a pouch with a spout that you squeeze onto something, it's not.
I think
and people, it's such a different, form factor, as they say, for a sauce, that I think that was another thing that was like an education hurdle that I didn't account for. So I think now, 5 years later, again, with our aioli, they're still kind of like, there are still buyers that are like, why would you put it in a pouch? And I'm like, what is the difference to you? And I don't say it in this aggressive of a tone, but like, okay, buyer. No, but it's like, why would it be more intuitive to have a bottle with a spout than a pouch with a spout, where you can actually get more of the product out, and you don't need to shake it and hit it? But it's not intuitive for everyone. So I think that you have going for you, in my humble opinion.
We'll see. And the next 90 days, we'll learn a lot about how we do in retail.
And you'll start to see, I guess, which placements make the most sense.
Yeah.
And, and I guess also it who is it that's making the elevated legumes? Is that Whole Foods?
Heyday Canning is a company that does the canned beans. They're great.
Yeah,
and
no, I know.
Whole Foods. Yeah, they're set.
I was
they're,
who's creating a set around elevated legumes?
Lizette's vision there when she talked to me.
She's smart.
Yeah,
she's the best. Shout out to Lizette. Any last thoughts about what emerging brands, either what you wish you had known, about what you wish they would be thinking about that maybe they're not, any opportunities they're leaving on the table, maybe anything you would say to yourself a year ago?
I mean, there's one topic we didn't get to. I want to talk about it, which is low sodium.
Okay.
And I think it's a blind spot for our industry. Mm-hmm. And I actually talked to several founders today, say they need to start thinking about this.
Right.
So when we launched, one of the most surprising things that I found, is like people don't really they weren't complaining about the protein or the fiber or the calorie. Like it was, and it's not high. Like our regular line is 400 milligrams. Mm-hmm. And I never really thought twice about sodium because younger, healthy, things like that, right? Where it's like, it's just not on my radar. And then I went to the store and I walked up and down the soup aisle at Sprouts and Trader Joe's. And I turned these cans around and it's 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 milligrams. And these are folks that can't have over 140 milligrams in a serving.
Right.
And I looked at my product line pretty hard and I was like, we just need to strip out some salt. Mm-hmm. And
if people want to add it back in, they can.
If people want to add, so it's like, all right, so the benefit of D2C was we tested it. And then people said, this is great. The only thing they don't like is they wanted more flavors. And so we did more flavors. And now it's 40% of our online sales.
Right.
And I would say, I'm trying to think about this. Like, why is this resonating with so many people? And, you go to Expo West and it's kind of a bubble.
Mm-hmm, very much so,
you've got people that are healthy and they got good relationships with food.
Wearing their Oura rings.
And wearing their Oura rings and sleep tracking. And they're the ones starting these companies, these younger people. And I worry that our industry is not doing enough to serve these folks that are, 1 in 3 adult Americans has or will have high blood pressure. Hypertension is the number one global cause of death. Here in America, it's like if you look at the numbers, it's not good. Yeah. And Nielsen IQ and some others, they're starting to see like, hey, sodium could be the next sugar and salt could be the next big thing. And I will tell you right now, I'm seeing it. And more people need to look at their products and start looking at, are there ways we can maybe cut back the salt 20, 30, 40%?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good idea. And, we're working on R&D for a new product line that is a ways away, but, people do want punchy flavor. Yeah. The thing is, sodium makes the whole palate, right? Mm-hmm. It brings you the flavor up front. Mm-hmm. It helps with the sugar. It helps with the heat. It helps with the umami, but we just keep saying to ourselves, okay, but we want to be under X amount of grams, which is less than half of the competitor. They're going to, when you taste it, they're going to taste stronger on a spoon. But if you want, you can add back in. But I think that's a good thing for people to definitely be thinking about.
And you know why I love your products?
Why, Ben? Tell me.
First-hand experience, they will help you eat more vegetables and they will help you eat more plant-based. And you need to lean more into that messaging too, because there's a lot of people out there that their doctors are saying, hey, eat more broccoli, eat more cauliflower or whatever. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. And all you got to do is throw it in a pan with some of your sauce and you were off to the races. I had an actual veggies. It was like a red beet burger the other day. By itself, I took a couple bites. It's very neutral to taste because it's very healthy and there's a lot of great ingredients in there. They're doing amazing things. Yeah. I put a squeeze of your yuzu on it, and it made it. It turned it to a 10.
Together a lot. Thank you. By the way, I don't know. Shout out again to Actual Veggies and Haley, but I had their the sweet potato fries. Yeah. And it's funny because, I have all these kids and we were making dinner together and I was like, oh, this is my friend's company. And I took pictures and I took the pan out of the oven with the fries and I just put it, I put it on the burner just for a minute while I went someplace else. And my kids had taken One of them grabbed a yuzu. One of them grabbed a sunshine. They were just eating them squeezed on the pan, and they were gone before the rest of the meal was done. So I was like, okay, that was an appetizer, I guess, before the actual dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why for me, like sauces and condiments and like it wouldn't feel like aligned with me as a human to make a product that didn't play well with others.
Yeah.
Like I kind of need to be with others,
for sure,
to feel like I'm contributing something. So, even other condiments, like we just did this collab with Jing. We made this gorgeous salmon and we did her like Jendu crunch with our sunshine chili.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Any resources that
in the sauce? I got to tell you, there was a period where I was like, should I start this company? Do I have the skills? And listening to this podcast helped me out.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad. Oh my gosh. He's a little choked up. Yeah. That's so nice. Thank you so much. That's really nice. Thank you. Aw. Well, on that note, okay.
Getting emotional here.
I know. It's intense. This whole thing is intense. And when we can help each other and when we can provide resources and, just give each other like a little bit of moral support.
Totally.
Because it feels a lot like you're making 100 decisions a day and they all feel really important and the stakes are high,
But I mean, getting back to your question about tips, I mean, this is the best time to start a food company because of all the resources that are available out there.
Yeah.
And all of like, this was not around, podcasts were not around 10 years ago.
No.
And you did not know what landmines you were about to step on. And every week you were telling people what landmines to avoid.
I was just like, what is operations?
Yeah.
What is it? Because I literally asked the head of operations at Bonza in episode 2.
Yeah.
So what is operations? And he was like, what? He was like, are you kidding? And I'm like, no, seriously, what?
Yeah.
Like, what I still am like, what am I supposed to expect from a broker?
Yeah.
Like I am paying 5% or whatever retainer. What exactly do you do for that? And how do I check that against reality?
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled I can be a resource to you.
100%.
Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show and for being in person and coming here. And good luck at Fancy Food and with your Walmart launch and everything. Armin, thanks for stepping in for Liam. It's always great getting to connect with you. Listeners, I hope that all is well. I hope you're feeling good. And I'll be back next week with another episode of In the Sauce. In the Sauce is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.